Can you send Joyce the link?
Yes, I'll do it right now.
Good evening, Laura.
Hello, how are you, everyone?
Doing well, thank you. How many active members do we have? Okay, we have a quorum.
You have a
Right.
quorum now.
Good evening, Joyce. All right, it being Wednesday, I'm sorry. Did we used to do these meetings years ago on Thursday nights, Pam?
Yes. Yes.
All right, it being Wednesday, December 15th, 2021. Just after 6:00 p.m., I call to order this meeting of the Brockton Conservation Commission. I would like to remind everyone that consistent with current COVID protocols, this meeting is being conducted via Zoom as a remote meeting. And we will shortly take roll call to confirm we have a quorum. And those in the members of the public wishing to be heard on a hearing, we will hear you after the applicant has done their presentation. We've heard from our agent and the commissioners have had an opportunity to ask questions. In order to participate or be recognized, please use the raise your hand function. If you are calling in, it is pressing star, right? Star, is it, or is it star 9?
Star 9.
Star 9 on your phone if you are calling in. Okay. So Stephanie Danielson present.
Laura Becoy present.
Sparks here.
Joyce Burrows is present. Okay, the first item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability for 161 Mulberry Street, no storage, National Grid headquarters.
Stephanie, your mic is,
Oh, this is the I'm sorry, this is the computer that doesn't have, if you hold on a minute, I can try and get my headset and see if that helps.
right now you're fine when you're,
But that means I have to sit like on top of my computer yelling, so I'm gonna try the headset. And it also makes it easier for me to hear everybody. The audio on this computer is not great, so this will take a second. I have to do a couple things here. Okay, can everybody hear me now?
yes.
Okay. All right. Andrea Kendall, if you could introduce yourself and tell us about the project.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. Andrea Kendall from LEC Environmental Consultants, here tonight on behalf of Massachusetts Electric Company, also doing business as National Grid. Megan, I'm not sure if Deborah Blanche from National Grid is in the
This is
sidelines.
Sean McCarthy, is he with you?
Not that I'm aware of.
He has his hand up, so I don't.
It doesn't sound familiar. Yeah, he's
He's
with
from
Solitude.
Solitude Lake Management. Is that,
Okay. He's not affiliated with this project right now, so, but here's Deb Blanche with us joining in. Thank you. The project before the commission is a request for a determination of applicability for a proposed snow storage management plan at the site, which is located at 161 Mulberry Street, also known as 100 East Ashland Street. It's a longstanding facility that's located adjacent to Trout Brook and associated resources there. I'll go ahead and share my screen, and it might be easier just to discuss and show you what the project entails. And we will go from there. So this is an overall aerial of the existing operations and service center. It is largely a paved area surrounded by a security fence with an office building in the southern portion of the site and a fleet maintenance and operations vehicle maintenance operations center down in the northern portion of the site. Paved parking areas, outdoor storage and vehicle storage areas and supplies within the northern portion of the site. This aerial is good because it shows the outline of the project, and I'm just going to go down to the next graphic, which shows the wetland resource areas on the site. Again, we have Trout Brook within the northeast corner of the site in light blue, and then in dark blue is the bordering vegetated wetland. Offset from the mean annual high water of the brook is the 25-foot riverfront area in orange. And then in dashed is the 50-foot local 50-foot riverfront area. And then associated with the BVW and portions of the bank is the 50-foot 50-foot buffer zone, and then offset is the 100-foot buffer zone in yellow. There is a in terms of the floodplain associated with the site, there is the mapped floodway in dashed blue, and then there's a zone AE elevation 96. We don't have elevation data for the site, so this is just a Mass GIS overlay. It could be slightly different if there was a topographic plan that existed for the site, but for informational purposes, we're just showing that. So National Grid in years past has been grappling with snow storage at the site. Currently, they have snow storage occurring within the southern portion of the site, within this landscape area along the edges of the parking lot. The site slopes from south to north, and the vast majority of the parking is within the southern portion of the site. What they've experienced, this is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service center and operations center. And then in the winter conditions, with the daytime thaw, nighttime freeze, they've had a lot of ice issues emanating from the melting of the snow storage pile areas. And as a result of that, they've had some slip and falls and some safety issues. And so they're looking to reevaluate where they can put snow storage on, recognizing that there will be time periods where they need to truck the snow off-site, and a better location where it's snow storage would be out of the way from foot traffic, from prominent car traffic, is within the northern portion of the site. Right now, they just have some different pieces of equipment and whatnot stored along the perimeter of the site. And they would be looking to, if they need to, is to consolidate that equipment, open up a larger area of a dedicated snow storage. The area in red is kind of a general outline of where the snow storage could be located. Right out here, there's a fence with a gate. They have a utility pole training area. And so this portion here is kind of a gravelly, unvegetated area. And this could also be utilized for snow storage. It's located the way the limit is, it's located just outside the 50-foot buffer zone. It's located outside of the floodway, the mapped floodway. And there would be erosion controls installed along the outer perimeter to block any prolonged, as a barrier to limit any movement of that snow outside of that. So we're seeking permission from the commission to go ahead and utilize that area. In the spring, after final snow melt, and no later than May 15th, they would be cleaning up any debris that might have collected there within that snow storage area, and reestablishing the site. If there's any, material movement, maybe in this gravel area, for example. So this area would, overall, it would be located in the floodplain and to a limited degree within the buffer zone. So open to questions. Deb, I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add, but happy to discuss this further. And I have some pictures if it helps on the ground to see what things look like.
Okay, if Deb doesn't have anything, Megan, would you please summarize your report for the board, please?
Sure. So to summarize, yes, that does look like the limit of the snow storage would be outside of the 50-foot buffer zone to the BVW. It would be within bordering land subject to flooding according to FEMA's map. I think knowing what we know about adjacent sites, if we had the elevations, I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually above base flood elevation, most of that site. But if we go ahead and assume it is in floodplain, I think seasonal snow storage is still acceptable under the performance standards for floodplain because most of the proposed storage area is already paved and impervious. And the pole training area is gravel, so partially pervious, but already would be considered filled and less useful for flood storage than the surrounding areas. So I don't think the seasonal snow storage would violate the performance standards for floodplain. I also note that their proposed plan does seem to comply with the Mass DEP snow disposal guidance, including the proposed erosion control barrier that's shown at sort of the down gradient edge of that area that would be used. Yes, so at the down gradient edge of the pole training area, erosion controls would be included as suggested by Mass DEP, and everything else seems to be in compliance with their guidelines. So based on that, I think it would be appropriate for the commission to issue the -3 determination that this work will not alter any resource areas and will not require filing a notice of intent.
Okay, if you could stop. Well, you don't need to stop sharing your screen. I can just scroll down. Bonnie, do you have any comments? Questions?
So, yeah, I did have a question for just due to the location and how close it is to Trout River or stream, is what what could be the possible impact of silt? As I know that has been a problem in Brockton in the past. A lot of our waterways they've had to be dredged from silt buildup due to snow storage. So salt obviously is unlikely to be used, as I don't think Mass DEP I don't think it's even allowed to be used, but that does mean sand, and sand does mean silt runoff into the waterways. So I'm just curious what will be done to kind of mitigate any of that potential problem.
Well, the goal and hope is that the erosion control barrier that's set in place would mitigate that during any thaw and thaw during the snow season, and then during the final thaw in early spring. So that would be the intent and goal of utilizing those erosion controls. And then with cleanup with debris is to I imagine that there would be a cleanup of that as well. Anything that's visible would be removed from the site and disposed of in accordance with any rules and regs by the state and such. I could ask, I don't know if Deb knows offhand.
Yeah,
what
we
this-
we regularly have erosion controls or on the fence line because we get some overland runoff from the upgrading property there, the BFI one. So we have erosion controls all around that property line that we change out frequently, just because if it rains a lot, it can be a flood that goes across the yard. So we have Clean Harbors changing them out probably, every 6 weeks or so. So it's like a regular occurrence for us. I mean, not that it's our fault, but they do like produce a lot of runoff and some other, they should have erosion controls. That's all. I mean, they do produce a lot of things that come from that property onto ours, and we're trying to mitigate that as much as possible, so
Okay. So what you're saying is the response to the question is that you would have the erosion controls installed?
yeah, I mean, we have them installed and we would continue that.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, Bonnie?
No, that was my concern. So thank you for that.
Laura?
And Deb.
Thank you. Okay. Laura, do you have any questions? I did see your hand, Joyce. Hold on a
No, I'm
second.
all set. Thank you.
Okay, Joyce?
Is it possible to ask that erosion control barriers be required all along the front there? No, not only in that small outcropping, but the part where it starts to impinge on the 50-foot buffer zone, like the edge that's along the other piece of property. Would it be possible to install a barrier throughout the entire part that's facing the river?
Need to sort of extend this, like something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, so there are utility poles here that we know there won't be any movement of snow down in here. But sure, depending on the topography, I can see how, if anything, maybe even moving it further up along here to fully encapsulate any snow, is that reasonable?
Yeah, it's not only the snow though, it's the snow melt, right? With any of the road chemicals that might be involved.
Right.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, this is a little bit of a hillside here, so things are coming down across in here. So we can certainly do more site-specific evaluation of
Not
where
there.
it makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to just build on that. That was my question, was I do not see any stormwater management BMPs in that area. And I was going to ask about treatment, and if there is no treatment pretty much say the same thing that Joyce just said, that we need permanent erosion control, which I understand it's not, you put up erosion control and over time it will become non-effective and you'll have to replace it. But especially during the snow season, that if there are no BMPs providing treatment, pre-treatment, then the erosion controls be installed to also prevent the runoff of petroleum byproducts from the melting snow.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is the configuration something more expansive that would like to have us this is not the best, my apologies.
Well, this doesn't
but
show grade, so it's hard for us to see
I understand, yeah.
where the slope is. What you'd want to do is prevent it from running into the buffer zone, which then eventually would make its way into the wetland and stream system.
Okay. Yeah, we could, based on where the contours and the movement of water is going, we could certainly expand on the limit of erosion controls during the snow season. And that would augment what's already there to control the water that's coming off from this adjacent property.
Okay, if the commissioners have no more questions, I don't see any hands raised from the public. So I would entertain a motion to issue a negative determination, number 3, with the condition that there be permanent installation during the winter season of erosion controls configured such that it prevents snow melt from making its way into the buffer zone. And Megan, you'll refine that in the determination. Do I have a motion?
Sparks here. I'll make a motion for the -3 determination with the ongoing condition for a permanent installation for erosion control as outlined by our agent.
Do I have a second?
Vora, second.
Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Vora's aye.
Laura, I.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
The next item on the agenda is a request for certificate of compliance for 1330 Pleasant Street.
Okay, I'm promoting the applicant, Danielson Gomes. I don't see anyone else for this item.
And Danielson, could you start your video, please? Thank you. And could you identify who you are for the record?
I'm the owner of the property and builders as well.
Okay. And you're looking for a certificate of compliance.
Correct. Yep.
Megan, I'm going to let you do a rundown, but it looks like there are a number of deviations on the as-built plan from the original approved plan.
Okay, yes. So I have reviewed requests for the certificate of compliance. I was also out at the site with Mr. Gomes on November 23rd. I'm going through the property. So echoing some of the deviations already noted in the request, I made note that the footprint of the house has been flipped or mirrored from what was shown on the approved plan. There is an extra front porch and 3 patio areas have been added. The as-built plan shows that the current limit of work encroaches into the 25-foot buffer zone in a few locations. When I was out at the site, I confirmed that the limit of work is within the erosion control barrier, which is still on the site. However, I was not able to measure the exact distance currently because the wetland flags from 2017 are too degraded or otherwise missing to verify if the as-built is indeed correct in terms of showing the encroachment. I also noted that there is a row of arborvitae trees and a low boulder wall along the current limit of work. The boulder wall is pretty much just a row of single boulders. I didn't note any breakthrough of sediment between them. Mostly the site at this point is pretty well stabilized with grass cover. There were maybe just a couple patches along that low wall that seems that they haven't taken to the grass cover at this point. I also noticed there's a crushed stone drive surrounding the house, which appears to be used for parking of residential vehicles. Also a block retaining wall along the eastern side of the house itself. That retaining wall is made of fitted blocks, so it seems fairly secure in terms of there shouldn't be any breakthrough with those fitted blocks. I did note that there were a few pieces of construction debris in the 25-foot buffer zone, like things like pieces of shingle, maybe like a strip of some sort of siding. I did point those out to the applicant to let him know that those would need to be removed, taken out of the buffer zone. And then the final deviation has to do with the grading. So back in 2018, early 2019, there was a significant amount of fill on the site, and the applicant was asked to remove it and grade the site as shown on the approved plan. So since then, it looks like there has been a significant amount of fill removed. However, according to the as-built plan, portions of the property, like the driveway, the house leading into the backyard, are still about 2 feet higher than what was proposed on the approved plan. So it looks like there's still some filling of the backyard, which according to the plan should not have been needed in order to meet the existing grades. And then finally, on the approved plan, the western side of the property showed the 176 contour kind of curving in order to direct drainage sort of towards the rear of the property. And the as-built, it doesn't look like it was graded, you know, as shown in that section. So overall, those were all the deviations I noted. Again, I couldn't confirm in the field if there is actually encroachment into the 25-foot buffer zone. The as-built plan shows that there is, but because the wetland flags are no longer there and it's an old delineation, I can't at this time confirm whether there has been encroachment.
Okay, I think because it's shown on the plan as such, that we need to assume that the encroachment has occurred. Do you have anything else to add before I go to the commissioners?
Just that, again, yeah, in terms of the encroachment, we either need to assume that the as-built is correct, or in order to establish it in the field, the flags would need to be replaced. So either one of those two ways would be how the commission would establish whether there's been encroachment. But yes, that would be my last point.
Okay. Bonnie?
Due to not even really knowing where to start, I guess my first thought is what I believe we need to reflag it so that we can verify anything that has encroached into the 25-foot. And from there, then what? I take issue with the excessive fill, which has covered the sock that's supposed to be going around. And And like I said, there's so much has changed from the approved plan, which to start with, both of my files are very small, so it's hard to look at the prints of what's actually going on. I can't make out any of the markers. Everything is super tiny, but I will cede to you, Stephanie, on much of this because there was a lot going on here and none of it looks right.
Okay, Laura,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I see for the record, like what was done to, in 2018, the originals and where we're at now, and it looks like a completely different plan. It doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't have any resemblance to what it looked like it was intentionally to be. And I would say that they definitely, have some significant issues that have to be revised and looked at.
Joyce?
Only if the height of the fill is that high, I would expect that everything would be channeled back towards those wetlands.
Changing the drainage pattern.
Absolutely.
I'll echo what the other commissioners say. I find the crushed stone surrounding the house particularly disturbing. The site is almost entirely within the 100-foot buffer zone of the wetland resource area, which means a substantial portion of the disturbance is within the 50-foot buffer zone. I personally never would have approved a driveway surrounding the house like that. There are a lot of reasons for that. And it doesn't look like there's any retained vegetation on the property based on this plan. So at this point, what's the commission's desire?
Well, I think first of all, I did note that I wanted to see the flags replaced
Yeah.
so we can properly evaluate. But I think given and like you said, Stephanie, with the excessive use of crushed stone, that maybe we could have some sort of restoration process that has to go on because it's so close to the 25-foot in a lot of the areas along that edge, or at least it looks like it on my very, very tiny little map here. So that's really what I can come up with off the top of my, and the fill, I don't know if we can remove some of the fill, all of the fill. I don't know what kind of impact it will have on flooding or the neighbors flooding, if there will be issues there. So those are all of my concerns and thoughts that I have in my pocket.
Okay, so the board's options at this point, and oftentimes in the past, we've asked the applicant if they want to continue. This isn't a hearing, so it would be a continuation of the meeting. The board could also, at this point, deny the certificate of compliance, at which point the applicant could resolve the issues that have been identified and come back to the board. Megan, do you have any guidance on that?
I mean, I think because this isn't a hearing and, there is no filing fee, there is no notice, really procedurally, it doesn't really matter, but in terms of housekeeping for the commission, if the commission would like to issue something in writing, it would probably make more sense to deny just so that it gives the commission an opportunity to issue what they would like to see, in a future application. Because again, it doesn't, the applicant, doesn't need anything in order to apply again. They just need to request,
Right.
their meeting
And
date, no filing fee. I don't think it's burdensome to have them back on the agenda that way. So if the commission would like you know, to issue something in writing, then it should probably be done via the denial letter rather than, if we continue, then it just,
Right.
it goes
Right.
just based on this, and that's just, you know, what we've said here. So it's.
And I think it makes it's more fair for the applicant too, because then they have in hand what the commission is looking for. So do I have a motion?
Sparks here.
Not a
I
hearing,
make-
so we don't have to close. Oh, I'm sorry, Bonnie.
Oh, no, it's okay. Sparks here. I make a motion to deny the certificate of compliance. Is that what?
And with some conditions?
With conditions that will be set forth by the commission and the agent.
Which we're looking for the site
did
to be
Yeah, did we agree the redoing the 25-foot flags? Did we agree on the removal of the fill?
I think the commission's in agreement on that.
And as well as, I know I
The-
mentioned it, I didn't know if there was an agreement on any of the restoration from that.
I think
crushed stone or-
the crushed stone should be removed to the approved, the driveway as approved.
Okay.
And then the area on which the crushed stone was applied should be restored as approved on the approved plan.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Eckler, second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye?
Sparks, aye.
Eckler, aye.
Forrest, I.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Gomes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a notice of abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 1123 Pearl Street. Okay, Mr. Beals, for the record, if you could please identify yourself.
Good, thank you very much. My name is Larry Beals. I'm with Beals Associates, and I am here tonight representing Casey Properties for an ANRAD for a property located at 1123 Pearl Street. And I think what might help is I've put together a brief PowerPoint with the plans and information that we submitted, as well as some photographs, if that's helpful.
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. So I'm assuming by now you can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Just going to do one more thing. Okay, good. I think I'm ready to go. So this is the site. As I said, it's 1123 Pearl Street. So with my laser pointer, I'm right now pointing at where Pearl Street is. The property line is shown with this bold, dark property line. It's partially developed. There's a parking lot, a bituminous concrete parking lot, an existing building, parking lot on this side of the site. I should say that this is the north arrow. So Plan right is north, plan left is south. So this blue area is the western portion of the site, and Pearl Street's on the east. The resource area that we're here to discuss with you tonight is a large pond, which is off the property, but as you can see, the buffer zone does extend onto the property, and that's what we're here to verify. The undeveloped portions of the site are sandy, sand and gravel type soils. It's thin topsoil. There's no topsoil in some areas, and the vegetation is somewhat sparse. You can see that it's somewhat irregular topography across the property. And going from west to east, we have a pond, and that blue indicates the wetland resource area. It's not all water. There is a land edge to that pond, but there's a pretty good embankment right along the wetland boundary that we mapped in the field. And we chose to map the top of that embankment. So if you were to walk out in this area, you would reach the top of the embankment, and I'll illustrate that with some photos. And then it pitches down fairly steeply to the actual wetland plant species and the hydric soils. So, oops, let me just, I'm gonna enlarge it so you can see it a little bit more clearly. So these are our wetland flags that we mapped. We started on the north end, wetland flag 1, and they extend down to wetland flag 14. So we've shown, from those wetland flags, we've shown the 25-foot no-touch zone, the 50-foot resource buffer, and the 100-foot resource buffer. And I should also point out that there's a FEMA Zone A flood boundary, which I am tracing right now with the cursor. It's a graphical representation. It did not have an elevation assigned to it, so we took that information from the FEMA plans and added it to the plan to show exactly where FEMA believes the floodplain is. However, you'll notice that it does cross a couple of contours, so it's more graphic than it is actual conditions, but nevertheless, it exists. Then to take you on a tour of the site, these are some representations of the plant community that's out there. And we determine the wetland boundary based on the 3 criteria of hydrology. You know, there's obviously a pond out on the site. And then plants and soils. So at the Toa slope, there are hydric soils. And in this particular illustration, this is our wetland flag. And from there, it drops down towards the pond. And likewise here, this is our flag. And then it drops down a few feet to the pond where you can see the Phragmites. And this gives you a pretty good illustration of where my pointer is. You know, there are places where there is no topsoil, it's a sandy material. There are lichens and mosses over to the top of embankment. We put the flag at the top of the embankment, but it then drops down. And more illustration of the wetland flags. Here, we're standing in the upland area, looking at a wetland flag, and you can see the blue pond in the background. And this is fairly representative of the upland area adjacent to the wetlands. If you go down that embankment, you can achieve a clear view of the pond. So this is an illustration of the pond in the background. And there are Phragmites that dominate some of the edge, but there are many other wetland plants along the edge of that pond.
Okay, Mr. Beals, I'm going to ask you to kind of move it along because we have a number of items on the agenda, and this is only the 3rd item.
Okay, that's my last slide.
Okay, thank you. Megan, would you like to provide comments?
Sure. I can just confirm that I was out to the site on November 22nd. And I can confirm that, yes, because of the embankment, there is a noticeable transition from upland to wetland, which corresponds to the flags as shown on the plan. So based on that review, I think the ORAD can be issued confirming the BVW as accurate. In terms of the bordering land subject to flooding, it is zone A, so there is no base flood elevation. If the applicant wants to confirm FEMA's interpretation as the floodplain on the site, I don't really have an issue with that, just based on my observations that flood zone A's tend to be pretty conservative in terms of oftentimes people end up getting lomas for them because they do end up being conservative. So, if the commission wants to confirm FEMA's boundary as the bordering land subject to flooding boundary, I don't think that would pose any issues.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie, do you have any questions?
To be honest, what is the intention of this hearing? What is being done to the property or intended for the property? Or are we just are we just here to verify the wetlands location?
Well, the application is to verify the wetlands, but Mr. Beals, if you know what the landowner is intending to do and can share that with the commission at this time, that would be helpful.
Sure. At this time, the landowner really doesn't have any plans for the property. We've kicked around a few ideas, and our recommendation was, look, before you do anything, you really ought to verify the wetland boundary, make sure you understand where the wetlands are, and any future planning would then be based on that wetland boundary location. So we're really just viewing this as the first step in a data collection effort to better understand the property.
Right, and I know that you are aware that if the commission does vote to issue an order of resource area delineation, it has a 3-year shelf life, which can be extended.
Yes.
But once it expires, you have to submit a new application. So, Laura, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time, no.
Joyce?
Oh, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay. This is a hearing. And do I have a motion to close the hearing? And let me just say, I don't see any hands raised by any members of the public. So seeing none, if I could have a motion from,
Right, this is Sparks here. I make a motion to close the hearing.
do I have a second?
Vora, second.
Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Vora, side.
Eclair, aye.
Motion passes. Do I have a motion to issue an order of resource area delineation confirming the wetland boundaries, the wetland resource area shown on the plan, as well as the bordering land subject to flooding, the limits of the bordering land subject to flooding?
Sparks here. I so moved.
Do I have a second?
Vora, second.
Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Vora, side.
Eclair, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
have, you're welcome. We have an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for property identified as map 015-146, Christie's Drive. Good evening, Matt, if you could identify yourself for the record.
Yeah, how's it going? I'm Matt Tavares with JK Holmgren Engineering.
Matt,
Okay,
Do you want me to share my screen with you guys? Because I have the plan up.
Yes,
All right.
please.
All right, can everybody see it?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so as you can see to the north side, that's where the wetlands are. We have a inland bank here, which is in the light blue. I'm following it with my cursor. It's along here, goes along the back side of the building. And then we also have a wetland line, the B flag series, which fall right along my cursor as well. And further up, we have a IVW, which is this A series, followed by my cursor right here.
And who did the wetland delineation?
Brad,
Brad Holmes?
yeah, Brad Holmes. Yep, thank you. I always forget his
Okay.
last name.
Okay, Megan.
Yes, so I was out to this site as well. I was able to locate all of the flags. So I can confirm that, yes, the IB flag series is along the mean annual high water line, or the first break in the slope. So that would be jurisdictionally the bank of this stream, which is Lovett Brook. So perennial stream with the 25-foot riverfront area. And then slightly up gradient of the bank flags are the wetland flag series B. And so those would be the BVW supported, the BVW associated with Lovett Brook. It's just a narrow band of BVW, so sort of the, riparian red maple strip of wetland you tend to see along the perennial streams that have kind of steep slopes like this one does. And then I found the Series A, which is the isolated wetland. So I did confirm that it does appear to be an enclosed depression, basically on the north side. There is an existing embankment that closes it off on that side. And then on the southern side, it looks like there's remnants of an old stone wall, which encloses it off from that side. And it looks like basically probably from runoff, probably gathers in the middle there. I did note water stained leaves in the middle of that, which suggests that it does contain standing water at some times. But based on its square footage, it's not nearly large enough to contain the 1/4 acre foot of water needed to make it jurisdictional as isolated land subject to flooding. So I would determine that it is an isolated vegetated wetland, but not jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act. So based on that, I think the commission can consider issuing the ORAD, confirming the BVW and the bank flags as accurate. So the B series and the IB series.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie, comments, questions?
Only the same as the last time, where I know we're doing an ORAD, but do we know what the intention is for the plot?
As of right now, he doesn't have definite plans. He's trying to figure out what he can do first before he makes any 100% moves.
Are they looking to expand?
Possibly. They want to see if they have room to do it. Also, they don't exactly know how they would yet. It based on where the wetlands are. They would have to figure that out. That's why he's unsure.
Okay. Or is it developed? That's an undeveloped lot, correct?
Yeah, the lot's undeveloped, correct.
Right.
Yeah, it's right
Right,
next to the
okay.
hotel.
Okay. Laura
No questions, thank you.
and Joyce?
No, I'm set. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
I move to close the hearing.
Do I have a
Voice,
second?
Sparks here, I second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye?
Sparks, I.
voice, aye.
Equal eye.
Motion passes. Do I have a motion to issue an abbreviated order of resource area delineation?
Sparks here. Motion to issue the abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for map 015 TAC 146.
Do I have a second?
Voice, second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye?
Sparks, I.
Voice, aye.
Equal eye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, you're on for the next item, 15 Leach Avenue.
Correct.
This is a request for certificate of compliance.
If you'd like, I can share my screen again too.
Yes.
All right. All right, so this is 15 Leach Ave. And basically what happened here that was different is you guys can see, oh, let me see if I can make this red for you so it's easier to see. Hold on. Oh. All right, can you guys see that?
No.
I don't have
Oh.
anything.
All right, hold on, let's try this one more time.
Yeah,
How's
that worked. And I can see the red dot.
Awesome, perfect. So there was a walkway that was added in between the true driveways. So that's one thing that they added that changed. The bulkhead was also moved. It's over now where my cursor is. It originally was on the back of the building underneath where the deck is, right about here. But because of the gas line coming into the side of the house over here, that's, you know, they have their furnace over there and everything. They didn't want that to be blocking kind of the entryway for the bulkhead. So they decided to move that to the other side of the house. And also because of that, this area, this compensatory storage area had to be shortened. It was supposed to be longer and come out here. So due to that being shortened, we had to compensate for it on this right side in order to get enough cubic feet to match what we were supposed to. We had to bring it back on this side. Also, the deck has been changed a little bit on the back versus what was approved.
Okay, I'm going to just review. So Megan's recommendation is, because the western side of the site is filled higher than proposed, the compensatory storage calculations on the as-built plan should include an update to the cubic yardage of fill in addition to the revised cubic yards of excavation included for the CSAs. Megan, do you want to add anything else to that?
Sure. So yes, the deviations Matt noted, I have, the only other deviation is the crushed stone. There is crushed stone added around 3 sides. It doesn't appear to be for a driveway or anything. It's pretty narrow. I assume maybe it's drainage or something, but it is added. That was not on the approved plan. And yes, in terms of the cut and fill, we did receive that revised excavation calculations, but because of the overall changes in the cut and fill on the site, my recommendation was that the whole cut and fill table be updated, because the original approved plan had the fill calculations and the excavation calculations. So I'm recommending that, since there's been little changes all over the site, particularly on the western side, that we get the full update of the cut and fill to make sure they're still, lining up as expected.
Okay.
Okay, Bonnie, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at present, but maybe after.
Okay, Joyce,
I'm fine, thank you.
Laura?
At this time, nothing. Thank you.
Okay, my question is, this is a single family home? That's a question.
No, I believe it's a duplex.
It's a 2-family.
Yeah,
Okay, but it is a residential structure.
correct. Yep.
And so now they're really, the compensatory storage, is that green space?
Yes.
Yes, it's grassed.
Yep.
Okay, and then there's all this gravel instead of a yard.
Correct. Yeah, it's crushed stone that they put along the edge of the house.
Okay, I am not a fan of crushed stone around a house as a yard for a couple of reasons. One, it becomes a heat, it has a heat island effect. I mean, thermal, it will retain heat. I mean, it's not necessarily significant. It's just, I'm not sure why you would want that there. And I mean, long-term, I'm not sure how it functions in
Yeah,
providing infiltration.
their reason for it is versus a mulch bed, it keeps pests out from coming to around your house.
If this were grass, there would be pests that would be coming around to the house.
Mulch, he was saying.
Why would it, and so I don't understand why it might not be a grassed area instead of a mulched area. I'm not sure what value this provides in utilizing the yard.
Other than looks and maybe possibly stepping in mud, and it's a little nicer to walk on crushed stone if you're walking around the edge of the house rather than grass.
Okay, my elderly father would disagree with that, but that's a little outside the purview of the Conservation Commission, but it wasn't what was approved. So again, like with the other fill material we saw, this was not approved. I would have had a hard time approving. And does this as-built plan show I'm having a hard time based on your plan seeing the wetland line.
There was no wetlands. It's a flood.
It's all floodplain.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, the brook is culverted, so you can see sort of to the left, there's
Yeah.
those two hashed lines.
Yeah.
Basically the footprint of the culvert or the culvert somewhere within that footprint. So
Yeah.
the commission retained control of the site as bordering land subject to flooding due to the observations of localized flooding and due to the proximity of the stream within the culvert. So that's how the commission is retaining jurisdiction.
Yeah. Could you point out where Keith Avenue would be in relation to this property?
Let's see if there's I believe Keith Avenue is here. Runs this way.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't have a locus map on here. But I believe Keith Avenue is here.
Okay. I did not get a chance to go out and visit this site, and I'm looking at Google Maps. And so this is on the south side of,
The school
it's
is over
not
here.
showing, I'm sorry?
If that helps, the school is over here.
Which school, Huntington?
East, South Middle School. Okay,
Yeah, the school's to the east side of the, sorry, to the west side of the property.
okay. If there are no other questions from the commissioners, I don't see any raised hands from the public. Do I have a motion? Or do we want? Megan has recommended that you update the cut and fill table.
Yep.
I would like to see the stone material, the gravel removed, but
I kind of would like to echo that, but mostly along that southern area
Right.
behind the deck. I
Yes.
understand along the sides, it's a duplex. I don't even know if they'll be allowed to garden, so having it be hardscaped or stoned, fine. I understand the connection of the driveways, but that back area is just, and they can also be problematic because it doesn't ever stay where you put it.
They have
And-
it,
I mean, the fact that it is a duplex, I mean, people who live in duplexes still like to have yards, I would think.
They do. But yeah, my other thought is who or what abuts that southern edge of the property? Is that another,
it's a single, a house.
that's a house, is there a fence there or is that just
Yep.
open property?
Yep, see, there's a chain link fence you can see here, and he
So
actually,
that pea stone is going to end up all up in the neighbor's yard.
well, he edged it. It's edged all the way around.
Yes, I did note, there's the plastic edging around the border of the,
Yeah, that it doesn't necessarily hold up. Does someone want to make a motion?
And what is this to accept the,
Either to
Certificate of
issue or
compliance.
deny the certificate of compliance. And if it's to deny it, what would we be looking for in order to approve it at a point in the future?
sorry, I just keep going back and forth between the proposed and the as-built.
Megan, what were your recommendations? I can't seem to find the,
my recommendation was, again, to update the cut and fill table together to see how they match up. Right now, we just have revisions to the excavation side of it. But I think that could be handled via a continuance if all parties are clear. Again, if the commission wants their concerns issued in writing, then the denial is the most straightforward way for the commission to put it in, the concerns in writing, if that's what they prefer.
I think for consistency purposes on how we look at gravel and going off of your plan, I feel like the denial with showing them exactly what needs to be corrected is the correct measure to go with this case, because we've been the same over pea gravel consistently on drainage, runoff, changing the plan. So that's kind of I feel like we have to stick, with the same consistency on that.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
Sure, if I can do it correctly. I would
He'll
just
do
say
it
that.
fine.
Yeah, I would just
I
say.
think what
motion-
you just said
Okay.
can suffice. You can say so moved as just.
Okay, so moved in the sense that we would deny and put in writing the recommendations for them to be able to listen to what the commission has inform them with the pea gravel and with what Megan has also put in writing to have reviewed and just make sure that it's in compliance.
Do I have a second?
Sparks here, I second.
Danielson, I.
Forsyth,
Beekler, aye.
Oh, Sparks, aye, sorry.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 219 Bellevue Avenue. I understand we have a motion to continue that to January 22nd. So do I have a motion?
I move to continue to January 22nd.
Second,
Sparks here, I second.
all in favor, Danielson, I.
Sparks, aye.
Forsyth,
Beekler, aye.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 940 Belmont Street. And these are for roadway improvements for the VA hospital. Matt, I think we know who you are and who you represent at this point.
Yeah. All right, I'll share my screen again too, because I have the plans up.
Have there been changes to the plan since the last meeting?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And if, I think you were waiting for stormwater review, and I had also asked to see the staging area moved
Yep.
further out of the buffer.
Yep, yep. So we got Beta's blessing, which is awesome. That's always good news. So I have in front of me Megan's comments. The first ones I'll go through are for the 25-foot buffer. I just want to make sure I have this right. Megan, you have on here, hold on, let me get the right color. There we go. You have the saw cut area. Sorry, saw cut and granite curbing. And I just wanted to make sure I was talking about this right area with you. Is that right here?
So I think there's a couple areas where it's going to go into the 25-foot no matter what. And yes, I think that intersection, because the stream passes under the road,
Yeah.
it's inevitable that that road is in the 25-foot. So even with the adjustments to the limit of work, that area is always going to be in the 25-foot.
Right, yeah, because that area is the existing conditions. That's just how it currently is. As for the next comment, the portion of the temporary swales and stone check dams near the southern end, which is over here.
Yeah, so it's around flag 66, 65.
Yep. So this area right here, we have no problem actually bringing that limit of work out and bringing it to the edge of the 25, if that would fix the problem.
I mean, I believe, yeah, certainly, probably in my first report, and I realized that was several months ago, that was my recommendation, was wherever brush line cutting can be avoided, particularly the 25-foot. Yeah, if the limit of work can be put at least within existing lawn area.
Yeah.
That there's no brush line cutting within the 25-foot, except maybe at that intersection.
Right.
Where the entire road is in the 25-foot. But I think other than that, they should be able to avoid cutting the brush line that's within the 25-foot.
Yeah, so we have this area where it happens, and then I believe over here it happens as well. So we're just going to move that limit of work to follow the 25 as you'd like. So I believe that is all for the 25. Yeah, yep, that's all we have for the 25-foot buffer zone comments.
And I just wanted to go back to, because I have, believe Beta's last report is the December 6th report. And I just want to follow up. underneath it's stormwater comment 11. It looks like their last response, beta 3, is says provide required drawdown device, V2, C2, page 91 of the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook.
Yep.
So I want to confirm, has that comment been addressed?
Yes, yes, it has.
Okay, and was there another response letter after December 6th?
December 6th is the newest letter that I have.
Okay,
So there's still an outstanding item.
Issue
Being the
resolved,
drawdown.
issue resolved.
yeah,
Yeah.
so understanding, so what I have, the last response I have from J.K. Holmgren's office is based on the November 3rd letter. And so under stormwater comment 11, the response was that the calculations in the stormwater report demonstrate that each basin will drain completely within 72 hours and such there is no need for a drawdown device.
Yep.
Looks like in Beta's follow-up on December 6th, they are again asking for that drawdown device. So I'm just trying to clarify then if that has been added as requested and then
Yeah, it
where
looks
was that
like
added?
JK, an emergency overflow. Yeah, it looks like our response to that, it seems like they were okay with that answer, that we do not need to add the drawdown because they didn't make a comment on it in this new December 3rd.
But they did in the December 6th letter, that is when they asked for the drawdown again.
Oh, they're asking for it. Oh yeah, provide required drawdown device V2, C2, P91. Okay, so that's, yeah, I guess we're,
The
yeah.
December 6th beta comment 3 is
Yep.
the response to J.K. Holmgren's comment back in November that they didn't think the drawdown was necessary. So I
Okay,
think
so-
is reaffirming that they do indeed want to see the drawdown device.
Okay, all right, yeah, we can definitely add that.
And if there is any like conflict, I'm sure we can reach out to Phil and clarify that. But
Okay,
by my reading it, I thought it,
yeah,
That's-
now that I looked it
I
over, that
didn't think
makes,
that
that
he
makes
needed to
sense.
clarify at this point.
Okay,
Okay, Megan, you
Yeah,
have.
while we have
made a
it
number
up,
of
yes. Before we, I do have some conditions when we get to that point. I just wanted to also, my other comment was about the limit of work in the erosion control barrier to make sure it's consistent across the whole sheet. Because right now, on some of the sheets, it's cutting across the new staging area. So it looks like, yeah, so right there, it looks like that you've got it
yep,
sort of cutting across it. So as it's revised to sort of pull out the little bit from the 25-foot, also making sure that it's consistent across all the sheets, because like on that one, it looks to be cutting across some of it. But yeah, that was my last comment prior to recommending special conditions when we get to that point.
okay.
Okay, anything else to add? Again, I'm gonna try to keep this moving along. We're running a little slow tonight. Do I need to, so it sounds like the plans need to be revised to show the drawdown area and to show the consistency in the erosion controls.
Yep, correct. And we're gonna move those couple areas out of the 25 as well.
Okay. Have the commissioners had an opportunity to read the conditions recommended by Megan? And if so, are you in agreement, or are there any questions or concerns about any of them?
My only, I guess, question slash concern is how we are including the new ones that literally we just heard today, because some of that stuff wasn't listed in the, like the moving of the staging area and that drawdown device. Is that
Oh,
considered part of the,
So where I think we're going on this is I want to make sure that the applicant understands the conditions and agrees with those. And it sounds like I think we would want to ask for a continuance until we received revised plans that show those two items. It's
Yeah.
just those two items, right, Megan?
Yes, in terms of revisions, we're looking at making the erosion control barrier consistent and adjusting it to get it out of the 25-foot to avoid brush cutting where possible. And then the drawdown comment from Beta, those are the revisions. Then I had included in my report recommended special conditions if we have received the revisions that were requested. I have recommended special conditions for the order.
So my objective for the commission would be, and for the applicant, that if they make those revisions to the plan, come back to the next meeting, we are all in agreement on the conditions outlined by Megan, and it should be a very quick meeting.
Okay.
For a vote. All right, so you want to continue to the meeting on the 22nd of January?
Perfect to me.
Okay, do I have a motion to continue to January 22nd?
Sparks here, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Or a second?
Danielson, all in favor? Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Forsyth?
Clara,
All right, Matt, are we, I think that's it for you on the agenda
I think
tonight.
you're done with me for tonight.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for being prepared to show the plans and
No
everything.
problem. Thank you,
We'll
guys.
see you
Have a
on the
good night.
22nd. Okay,
Have a good
thank you.
night.
You too. All right, the next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 93 Tilton Avenue.
Okay.
Peter Lyons has his hand raised.
I
Okay,
believe he is the representative from Collins Engineering. I'm moving him now.
okay.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Peter, I always recognize your face, but I never recognize just your name.
Righty, maybe next time. Any introduction, or do we want me to just bring the plan up, or?
Megan, I'll leave that up to you. Should we just have Peter?
We can bring up the plan. We had the presentation when the hearing was opened at the last meeting, so I think we're looking at decisions made since the last meeting.
Yeah, with your permission, I'll jump into it and kind of do a quick recap on the project and some of the changes we've made in the last couple of weeks. If someone could confirm that the plan is
Yes.
displayed.
Yep, we can see it.
All right, I'll start here and then we can kind of zoom out or move around the property as needed. Basically, as an introduction, I'm Peter Lyons with Collins Civil Engineering Group. I'm representing the property owner for 93 Tilton Avenue. This project was introduced a couple weeks ago. This is the raising and reconstruction of an existing single-family home located off of Tilton Avenue. It's a skinny little access that goes to a good-sized lot hidden out back. We're contending with a lot out here. We have an existing stream, a pond, the associative BVWs, and all the buffers from that. So it's a pretty busy site. I'll do my best to kind of summarize it. Right here, I'll trace out the 100-foot inner riparian zone to the stream. So you can see the house, they're planning on using the existing foundation It's just gonna be basically foundation up architectural work. No significant site work around the house, no regrading. Larger portion of the project is the installation of a septic system comprised of a 1,500 gallon septic tank, a pump chamber, and an elevated leaching bed in the northwestern corner of the property. We have proposed an erosion control, which pretty much parallels our proposed lawn area down across the field, and then tying in with the existing driveway, which is going to serve as our site access coming in from the east. That will be for any work on the house as well as construction of the septic system. The hashed area is essentially our 10,000 square foot area to be grubbed and cleared out of the existing vegetation and stabilized with a New England upland seed mix. The grades will be negligibly affected with the exception of the leaching area, which will be coming up about 2 or 3 feet above existing grade to accommodate the high groundwater in that portion of the site. One of the new things from the last presentation, excuse me, we're proposing a mitigation area in the back. The whole site is loaded with invasive Japanese knotweed. So we're proposing an area of approximately 2,100 square feet to the northeast of the existing house. The area is currently saturated with the knotweed. We are proposing to remove all that and provide a new upland seed mix as well as an amended tree and planting schedule. Can try to pull that one up quick. Let me see here. I'll just zoom in on this quickly. This is the 2,000 foot area. We're proposing to get rid of the knotweed as well as some extensive plantings. We have proposed dogwood, high and low bush blueberries, chokeberry, and some maple, as well as planting notes requirements for that. I'm not going to read through all those. I guess if there's any questions from the commission, I can start to answer some of those.
Okay, just before, nope, I'm sorry. Megan, do you have any other comments?
Yes, so yeah, I'll confirm based on the site walk I took with the representatives. We concurred that the proposed restoration area is the best location to most feasibly remove the knotweed and provide a shrub restoration area. We determined that eradicating the knotweed from around the pond was not feasible and would require alterations to the resource areas, including the bank of the pond, whereas this proposed area in the northeast is a more isolated patch of knotweed that could be used as basically a 25-foot buffer zone restoration area that's more likely to be successful. And so my only other comment from the revised plan just has to do with identifying the final limit of work, that is the limit of work where the permanent markers go. So in my report, I had highlighted the area that my understanding or my recommendation of where those markers would go. That would be my suggestion. It's basically the area that's outlined currently with the dark black, and then it extend down the driveway. So it's mostly, you know, the 25-foot boundary, but also the footprint of disturbance as defined. My recommendation is that that boundary be that solid dark line inside of the buffer zone restoration area, because generally we like to set our final limits of work outside so that the restoration area does become just that, so that it doesn't get treated the same way as the rest of the lawn. So in my report, I had just quickly sort of drawn a red line over that area just to recommend that we highlight it so that it's very clear where those markers go, because those markers are what are going to guide any future homeowners that, this is the footprint of maintained lawn that they can expect to be working with, and anything else is going to be require, a new filing with the commission. So beyond that, if any other concerns have been addressed, I did also recommend some special conditions related to the monitoring of the restoration area, just to make sure that it moves along and that we have check-ins and reports prior to any certificate of compliance.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the commissioners? Bonnie?
Well, I was glad to hear Megan brought up the 25-foot buffer zone crossover, because that was going to be my first comment. But my second comment being, it was the removal of the knotweed that will be done without the use of chemicals or with direct chemical implements. Like, how do we know what the intention is for the removal of the knotweed, since I know it is an issue?
If you're asking me to speak on that, I don't think they intend on using chemicals. I believe it's, mechanically or by hand. I know you can pretty much remove right down to the base of those, and then a lot of times you can just kind of pull the base out by hand.
Oh, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work at all. They're a rhizome. And so regardless of whether you remove the body of the plant, if you leave any of their root system in the soil, they regrow. They're
Okay.
incredibly pernicious.
Yep. I mean, that may be spelled out within the, the details of the plan, but I don't know where that is offhand. I apologize.
Okay.
We
Megan,
might, so
can
I
you-
know in past orders of conditions with knotweed removal, we have included a condition that, the entire footprint be excavated in order to excavate all the root masses. So that could be added as a condition here that, that entire footprint is to be, excavated to excavate the mass.
Right, and I think that included bagging in heavyweight, dark plastic bags and left.
Yes, I do.
So that,
Filing as a condition already.
yeah, okay. Any other comments, Bonnie?
No.
Laura?
Not at this time.
Joyce? Okay, we have a member of the public whose comment has a question or is seeking, and I think you may have already addressed this, Peter, but let's make sure. Could someone address a question regarding the area of proposed septic being elevated in regards to the rest of the site and adjacent wetlands and the impact that might have? And I think you may have already answered that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an open question, but to address, I guess, some of the concerns with the septic, I mean, right off the bat, I'll point off the existing septic system, which is just a cesspool in the groundwater, within 100 feet to the stream, just outside 25 feet to the wetland buffer. So that's an outdated cesspool. The reason that our new system is going to be elevated is to provide separation to groundwater, better treatment.
Right. I
We
think
have-
that if I may, I think what the and this is from Debbie Peterson, I think what Ms. Peterson is asking is, what is the elevation? She states that the elevation in that area is already higher than the rest of the site. And that, of course, providing that separation is going to increase the height overall. So might that impact the wetland resource areas and certainly adjacent properties?
Sure. My answer to that is yes, it is in a higher elevation. We see elevation 158 in the corner. Our proposed system goes as high as 160. So we will be about 2 feet above existing grade. Every time we design something, we are concerned with a few things: discharge off of the property, which isn't really a concern here. To the north, we have significant stone walls, and the grade continues to go up as you go north, indicated by the contours. So the drainage patterns, with the exception of this small area, have not changed. All of the water that was historically running down the hill and into the wetlands is still going to be doing the same route. So we're not really impacting surface water at all. We're not creating any more impervious areas. All the work is to be done, is going to be a vegetated area at the end of this process. So we're not creating any additional runoff. Even where the tanks are, there's no proposed change in grade. So we will not be negatively impacting the abutters or creating any detrimental effect to the existing resource areas.
Okay, let's see. I've asked Ms. Peterson to identify where her property is located, but I've not received a response.
And if I could, Stephanie, I can also add a bit of regulatory information.
Please.
So within the regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act, there is a specific passage in relation to septic systems that states that as long as the soil absorption area or the leaching area is at least 50 feet from a wetland resource area, it is presumed to meet the standards of the Wetlands Protection Act, provided that it is installed and maintained according to Title V. So 310 CMR 15 and Title V septic compliance, that's regulated by the Board of Health. So they would be able to speak to more what's required for compliance under Title V. But under the Wetlands Protection Act, if a septic system is compliant with Title V and the leaching area is at least 50 feet from a wetland resource area, then the regulations say that we can presume it complies with the interests of the Wetlands Protection Act.
Thank you. Peter, Ms. Peterson indicates she lives at 85 Tilton Avenue. I don't see that on the plan. Oh, there it is. She's up in the upper right-hand corner, so the northeast. So her property would not at all be affected by the location of the septic system.
No, we're basically, the new system is as far as we could possibly put it from any of the existing properties, and a maximized distance to the resource areas as well.
Okay. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to comment or ask a question? I do not see any raised hands. And we are not looking for revised plans at this
My
time?
only recommendation would be that, again, due to the complicated nature, the limits of work, that if the commission would like the final limit of work with the locations of the markers to be called out, we might want to see that on the plan. Again, in my report, I sort of highlighted the area but I'm not sure if it's as a parent looking at the plan, so the commission might want, to request that highlight be added just to make it very clear where the final limit of work is going to be. So after the restoration work, after the temporary encroachment into the 25-foot, the markers are going to go at that final limit. So we might want that on the plan.
Okay, I would agree with that. And we'd like that before the hearing's closed. Would the other commissioners concur or have a different opinion?
I agree with what Megan said.
Same, I agree.
Okay, again, similar, thank you. Sorry, I'm talking over people. Similar to the last notice of intent we just talked about, Megan does have a series of conditions. They're pretty standard when we're dealing with this type of sensitive work in restoration work. Again, all the commissioners have had an opportunity to review those.
Mhm.
And the applicant, so Peter, would you like to continue to January 22nd?
Yes, if I could just quickly get the clarification. So we're gonna show the perimeter. Any specific intervals? We want to show markers every 20 feet, 30 feet?
30 feet is too far apart, I think.
I believe so. In my report, I believe let me see.
Let me see what you,
I believe so. In my report, in the recommended conditions, the permanent marker recommended condition, I think I specify every 15 feet. And I believe that's also what I discussed in the field with the representatives present, was every 15 feet.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so I guess with that being said, we'll request a continuance.
okay, do I have a motion to continue the hearing to January 22nd?
I
Sparks
moved it.
here, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Boris, second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Boris, aye.
Bye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 159 Torrey Street for Thorny Lee Irrigation Pond Vegetation Management. Mr. Castellani, are you there? You need to unmute yourself and start your video, please.
Was there somebody else on this that was part?
Moving over Sean McCarthy,
on?
this
Okay.
was Solitude Lake Management.
Okay, I am here, sorry.
This is Sean McCarthy. I'm here too.
Okay, can you start your video and unmute yourself? And will someone be doing a presentation?
Excuse me, has the commission been able, excuse me. Has the commission been able to review the notice of intent write-up?
Well,
is
yes, but
Okay.
usually the applicant does a presentation to the board and for the public that's attending the meeting.
I'm sorry, Stephanie, are you looking for something visual or just for us to present the,
You have a plan, correct?
yes,
The plan should be presented to the commission and a description of the project.
okay. Well, just give me a second to,
And if you could identify yourselves for the record, please, and your
I'm sorry, this is,
association with the project.
this is Jeff Castellani. I work for Solitude Lake Management. And with me is Sean McCarthy, who also works for Solitude. And we've been asked by our customer, Thorny Leaf Golf Club, to present this notice of intent to do partial restoration and maintenance of the irrigation pond. see if I can present a photo. Share screen here. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so the management goal of this notice of intent is to do a partial restoration of this pond. Their current problem is that they've lost at least half of their water volume in order to do irrigation on their grounds. It's also by removing that and restoring that water volume, the secondary goal is actually to create more aquatic plant diversity and also to remove some of the nutrients associated with the decaying of leaf matter that's spurring nuisance aquatic vegetation. The notice of intent is first for mechanical removal of plant material, root mat, and decaying organic matter. Then followed by, if needed, spot applications with a herbicide to control nuisance growth of aquatic vegetation, submerged and emergent. Obviously, one being an invasive, which is Phragmites or common reed. On the map, it shows the location where the hydro rake would be launched, and that would also be what we would call the staging area where material would be placed for a piece of equipment, a land-based piece of equipment to remove by dump truck and bring to a compost area. The outlet structure would be prepped with a permeable turbidity curtain so that it allows water to continue to flow through, but traps any suspended solids from the mechanical removal process of the plants in their root systems. Sean, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, Jeff is the expert and will be handling the removal of the vegetation, the rotted vegetation, which, you know, over the years settles to the bottom of the pond. We will not know until spring exactly what the plants are that we need to deal with in the pond. And the reason I say that is we have a pretty good idea what it will be. However, we want to do a survey and make sure that we only treat for those species that we find that are considered invasive. And some years there's more than others. So what you see here in our application is, I'll just call it our arsenal of things that we used, you know, EPA approved herbicides, other control matters, in some cases, you know, non-herbicide treatments are listed here too. When we find what those plants are, we will say, you know, we found X number of this in this amount of surface area, and then we go ahead and treat that. We're very sure that we're going to find Phragmites, and that's one of the things that, you know, Jeff and his crew doing the actual physical removal, the hydro raking, will focus on. And then we will look for any reemergence of those plants and treat them. You want to wait till they have grown somewhat, because the way that the herbicide works is you treat the plant and it sucks the herbicide, the chemical, down into the root, because as you know, it's rhizome, and it doesn't just, you can't just get rid of it by cutting it. You know, you want to be able to have other ways to address it too. So we will come along later and get what Jeff missed, basically.
So, Megan, I have a basic question before I ask you to just go over your report. I mean, what we provide, I don't consider what's been provided a plan. It's certainly not a surveyed plan that shows the surveyed limits of, or does not appear to show the surveyed limits of the pond area. Is there a bordering vegetated wetland around the pond? I mean, this is not our typical plan submission.
And I guess the only thing I can comment on is this is typically how we present a notice of intent to conservation commissions. We don't usually tend to present engineering plans. Most of our work is done within the BVW because we're working within the water.
So you are working within the BVW if there is one surrounding the pond.
I mean, just where we're placing the hydraulic launch, the staging area would be considered, you know, the bank of BVW, of the water body.
And the hydro rake sits on the surface of the pond and rakes as it moves around the pond surface.
Right. The purpose of the hydraulic is so that you're removing material from the water versus from land, so that you're not disturbing the shoreline. You're not going all the way around the shoreline in order to remove material. The hydraulic. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the hydraulic it's a hull structure or a barge, and it has a boom and a dipper on it, which is basically an arm like a backhoe and excavator. But at the end of it, it has what's called the York rake attachment. It's a farm implement. It's just a bunch of tines that come down, and what it does, it allows that attachment, it goes into the water, and it grabs the material and brings it up and leaves the water in place. It doesn't displace water. It's just removing material from the water.
Right.
It's driven by paddle wheels, so there's no there's no outboard motor in the water that's disturbing anything that shouldn't be disturbed.
Okay, Megan, would you summarize your report, please?
Sure, and just to go back to the question of the flags, by my understanding, the two resource areas that I know are out here, the land underwater, which wouldn't be flagged because it's usually determined by the boundary of the bank. So in terms of if a resource area were to be flagged, I think we'd be looking at bank flags. Bank flags could define the boundary of the bank of the pond, or the mean annual high water line of the pond, and then that would define the land underwater would be the area inside the flags. That would be the more specific way of doing it. And then in terms of the comments from my report, mostly I just want to echo a comment made by Mass DEP when they issued the file number for this project. They recommended that the commission determine whether the proposed work meets the definition of an ecological restoration project, because this is being proposed as a limited project that meets that criteria. So the definition from the regulations for an ecological restoration project is a project whose primary purpose is to restore or otherwise improve the natural capacity of a resource area to protect and sustain the interests identified in the Wetlands Protection Act, when such interests have been degraded or destroyed by anthropogenic influences. So Mass DEP did include their comment that the commission should consider whether the removal of native, submersed, and emergent vegetation meets that definition of ecological restoration project. If the commission determines that it does not, then the project needs to meet the performance standards for the resource areas. So again, it would be meeting the performance standards for bank, which I've outlined under my recommendations. And then the performance standards for land underwater and as those outlined. So before we get into that, I think the commission needs to, or should determine right off the bat whether we're going to consider this as the ecological restoration limited project, because if not, then we need to consider the performance standards for the resource areas.
Okay, if you could stop sharing your screen for a moment, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And so again, based on your presentation and the notice of intent, the primary goal of this work is to increase the storage, the water storage capacity of the pond for irrigation purposes at the golf course, correct?
Correct. And it's also it's in that process of restoring some of that depth, it's also creating a better environment for native plant diversity and for aquatic life and for wildlife.
How does it do that if during the summer months you're withdrawing water from the pond in a manner, in an artificial manner that wouldn't be occurring otherwise?
So I understand the question. I'm just kind of flipping it to the winter months right now. Aquatic life, if we should have a winter where we have a heavy freeze and the ice gets over 2 feet, there's only 2 feet or less of water depth in that pond currently, so the aquatic life would be threatened by that. There would be no water; it would be all frozen.
It would have more depth. But the other thing is too, the water removal is happening now anyway and has for years.
Right.
So by increasing the depth of the, or I won't even say increasing, restoring it to the depth that it had years ago, because it has filled in, you are essentially restoring that part of what the water is or was, and you are allowing for more of a reservoir to be there. So in most cases, that would be a good thing.
Megan? Hi, I'm just a little, could you repeat your definition, please? That was the natural capacity and the anthropogenic forces as to whether or not this is an ecological restoration project. I mean, it seems like a restoration project, certainly for the golf course. Is it truly an ecological restoration? I'm just not sure what could you redefine that?
Yes, so this is the exact definition. So this is from the regulation, states that an ecological restoration project is a project whose primary purpose is to restore or otherwise improve the natural capacity of a resource area to protect and sustain the interests identified in the Wetlands Protection Act, when such interests have been degraded or destroyed by anthropogenic influences.
So I think the key words there are a project whose primary purpose, and it doesn't, I mean, the primary purpose of the project is not to restore or otherwise improve. The primary purpose is to increase the volume for irrigation purposes, and a side benefit would be some ecological improvements. And I'm putting that out there for commissioners to weigh in on as well.
Is there very much stream, are there many streams that lead from, and I mean, is that an isolated irrigation pond, like a retaining pond, or are there streams and things that flow from one water body to another? And in that photo that you had, it almost looked like there was another pond nearby. And it also looked like at the bottom of the photo, it almost looked like there was a stream. I guess I'm just a little concerned about the possibility of using herbicides that then might maybe leach down towards, Meadow Brook and down towards the Taunton River watershed area. I don't know if, because 30B is with, I mean, it seems to be within that.
I understand what you're saying.
That's an excellent point, Joyce, that if the primary purpose is restoration, and then you're going to be applying, and we haven't even gotten to that conversation, you're going to be applying herbicides, that kind of contradicts the purpose of ecological restoration.
I mean, it would
And
be
you're
nice.
still,
It would be nice if you
Well,
really,
yeah,
really.
not
targeted-
necessarily, because some of those are invasive species that Massachusetts wants to get rid of, Phragmites being one, good example. They are highly invasive and they tend to take over and squeeze native species out. I mean, one of the things that we like to say in this business, I mean, certainly other people use it too, there is a cost of doing nothing. Sometimes you can ignore invasive species or, sediment buildup and things like that. And in the long run, you end up causing more of an ecological problem than you do by making an attempt to address it, or more than attempt, making sure that we use EPA approved herbicides, doing the type of physical raking that we know will make a difference in the pond depth and things like that. So I would say that if you want to make that part of the conversation, which by all means you should, know that what we're using is approved. We use it in the way that it is approved to be used. It has a short shelf life. In other words, it dissipates quickly. And, that's as much as I can say. There is a cost of doing nothing also.
It's just the downstream, it's just the downstream stuff that I wasn't sure about. That's all.
Mhm.
so again, the question is, does the commission believe this is an ecological restoration project? Which is, so Megan, I understand that if it's determined it's not, they have to comply fully with the performance standards. What is the advantage to the project proponents if it is determined to be an ecological restoration project?
If it's determined to be an ecological restoration project, then it's an example of one of the limited projects. So, there's under the regulations, there's different types of limited projects. A lot of times utility projects classifies a different type of limited project, but basically it's exemptions from meeting the performance standards. Generally speaking, for a limited project, there's a truncated, expectation as defined. So when you fill out that Appendix A, the Ecological Restoration Limited Project Checklist, you check off according to that checklist. And that sort of, again, if you accept that then as a limited project, you accept the checklist and the interests as it's checked off, and then it basically becomes, to the extent practicable, basically.
Right. So, and Megan has listed, so the performance standards, any proposed work on a bank shall not impair the following: the physical stability of the bank, the water carrying capacity of the existing channel within the bank, groundwater and surface water quality, capacity of the bank to provide breeding habitat, escape cover, and food for fisheries, the capacity of the bank to provide important wildlife habitat functions. Also, any proposed work within land under water bodies and waterways shall not impair the following: the water carrying capacity within the defined channel, which is provided by said land in conjunction with the banks, ground and surface water quality, the capacity of said land to provide breeding habitat, escape cover, and food for fisheries, and the capacity of said land to provide important wildlife habitat functions. A project or projects on a single lot for which is filed on that cumulatively alters up to 10% or 5,000 square feet. Are you claiming or concerned that you can't meet these performance standards?
No.
So there really isn't a need for it to be considered an ecological restoration project. Especially when its primary purpose is.
I don't think that automatically rules it out though, does it? I mean, certainly it seems to me that we've
Well,
met
generally
several of the
when
standards
you
of the,
seek
of the first.
status as a limited project is so you can take advantage of the exempt performance standards. It's not just because, it's because for some reason the project can't meet the performance standards and there's a perceived benefit, should be a benefit moving forward. I personally would not find this to meet the standard for an ecological restoration project. But again, there are 3 other commissioners.
Can I ask a real basic question? At any time, was there more water in this pond that's been recorded? Because the idea is to add more water. So if it's a restoration, the concept would be that at one point in time, this pond held more water, in my simple thought of it. So my question is, we've all talked about increasing the water, but is there evidence that because of vegetation and everything that has collected over the natural process of the pond, the restoration would be to restore it back to its time in which it was recorded at being at a deeper level?
So I guess historically, what we're removing is unconsolidated organic matter. We're not trying to deepen, we're not trying to change the bottom. The bottom is a consolidated surface. And the whole, with a hydrate, the hydrate cannot penetrate consolidated surface. It's only designed for plant control applications and to remove some of that buildup of leaf litter, debris, and decaying organic matter that creates what we call muck.
So it's not altering the land underwater.
Correct. We are not changing the substrate of the bottom. We're just removing the buildup of accumulated organic matter and plant matter, root system, excessive growth of root systems, and at the same time removing nutrients, which should mitigate nuisance aquatic growth because we're taking away its nutrients.
Right, and one of the
Again, I
things
go
that,
back to the question of, and I'm posing this to Megan at this point. Megan, do you feel that based on what has been presented to the commission, that the performance standards that would apply could not be met?
Because we're looking at bank and land underwater, generally, in my view, their performance standards are not as burdensome as bordering vegetated wetland and floodplain. Floodplain and BVW, their performance standards tend to be harder to meet because it usually requires replication or compensatory storage. With bank and land underwater, I would say probably for bank, the performance standard I would be concerned with would be physical stability of the bank, because about 60 feet is being proposed as part of the launching area. So generally, that performance standard usually requires, a plan for maintaining the stability of the bank. So usually if there's work, say, that's going to disturb the bank, there's erosion controls proposed, there's seeding proposed to restore, vegetation along the bank if it becomes destabilized. That's probably the most cumbersome bank one, at least in terms of this project, because a lot of them, the rest have to do with the capacity for water, and that is sort of the goal of this. So
right,
it is not to reduce carrying capacity of the water body, so it should inherently meet those standards. And again, the habitat one, I think some of the argument towards improving habitat could meet those standards. So yeah, I think the one that we might need a little more info on is the physical stability of the bank relative to what happens when it's launched, what erosion controls would be used around the bank itself. And then for land underwater, again, it shouldn't be too hard to demonstrate compliance with those standards, because again, we shouldn't be impairing the water capacity, because again, the goal is not to reduce the capacity. Same thing with providing habitat, ground and surface water quality. I think that might be the only sticking point because of the point Joyce has brought up. This is a connected waterway system. It does receive water from, up from Lovett's Brook and through Gary's Farm, past the Tilton Ave property we were just looking at. It goes into this pond system and does eventually get out to West Meadow Brook and towards the high school and so on. So I think that might be a sticking point, the discussion with the herbicides in particular, making sure it complies with that performance standard in terms of surface water quality that's moving downstream. And then in terms of the wildlife habitat functions, that's the wordiest one. I think the only thing we'd have to look at is that 5,000 square foot. If anything triggers with that. But again, because they are proposing raking the organic muck layer, if they can make the argument that they are not actually altering the land underwater, and they can show that, raking the organic layer does not affect the land, then it doesn't, it seems possible to me that they can meet the performance standards for land underwater with what they're describing. But again, I think this side would be a further discussion because of the surface water quality requirement.
So, I mean, at this point, if the board has enough information or answers to their questions, I'd like to take a vote on whether the commission finds this to qualify as an ecological restoration project.
So is that an
I will-
unofficial vote, or is that a?
Well, I'm going to ask it in the form of a question, and then the answer should be, so do you find, the question will be, do you find that the project meets the definition of an ecological restoration project? And your answer would either be yes or no. So I will pose the question, and then I will do a roll call response. Again, I'll repeat it. Do you find the project to meet the definition of an ecological restoration project? Bonnie?
No.
Joyce?
No, and when I see here that it's a limited project checklist, I do think that it shouldn't be limited.
Laura?
No.
Danielson, no. Okay, now, based on that and understanding that the project needs to comply with the performance standards that Megan went over with us, are there other questions related to the proposed work?
The only
Joyce?
request that I would have is that someone be able to evaluate whether or not the surface water quality standards need to be addressed. I'm not sure exactly how that would be done, but it just, when I was reading through and it mentioned something about inactivating nutrients using aluminum sulfate to sequester dissolved phosphorus. The phosphorus probably came from fertilizers, right? So it just seems like there's a lot of anthropogenic forces going on. That's all.
Right, so that would be an ongoing problem with the nutrients because it's a golf course. They do apply fertilizers, it rains, and presumably the rainwater flows into the ponds. and
it
the
probably-
nutrients travel, which is probably part of the problem. So
Right.
what happens, that's a really good question. How do you prevent the problem from recurring once you've cleaned up the plant material? Would either of you care to respond to that question?
So,
Uh,
I mean,
Go ahead,
the
Jeff.
first thing is to control nutrients coming in, besides the golf course, you also have to control the watershed. And again, having streams coming in, some of those nutrients are coming in from other sources, not just the golf course. Also, I believe, and correct me if I'm
So
wrong, but
I'm sorry, you're saying the golf course should not address the problem in their immediate control?
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's more anthropogenic influences besides what the golf course is doing. That causes excessive nutrients within water columns.
And the algae buildup can be related to the rotting vegetation that is at the bottom of the pond too.
Right,
And again, all I can say, if you don't, you can have an environmental issue if the algae gets built up too much, robs the water of oxygen. It can kill fish, turtles, things like that too. So there is still an environmental element. There are ways of addressing all of this. So is there a specific request you'd like to make of the golf course that we could pass along to them as far as how they treat things there? I'm not sure what the next step should be, because we were hired by them. So I
right.
don't know if there's something you want us to tell them.
Well, you mentioned, so I think that's where we're trying to get to. You mentioned upstream impacts of nutrients being discharged into the system. I mean, that is why we have the NIPD's permits and the MS4 permits is, the EPA has been very active in trying to control the nutrients entering stormwater and into our waterways. So again, I'd like to see the golf course do something. I think they need to come back with what is their management system. So for example, in the community that I work for, the Conservation Commission has adopted a more ecologically friendly lawn management system that they share with their applicants, which includes a much reduced but well-managed fertilization and watering scheme for grassed areas that helps reduce the runoff of nutrients into the waterways.
So, I guess just one observation is they don't have manicured lawns up to this pond. They have a buffer zone around the pond.
Where is
So
There's no line work on it. There's no maps or anything available for us to be able to see any of those things. And that, I think that would have been a major help in beginning this conversation, would be to see the outline of where's our buffer zone, where's our vegetated borderlands, all of these things that we're having to imagine instead of being able to see. And I think that moving forward, we really need to be able to see that.
Where is that irrigation pond relative to the entire golf course and everything else that's around?
yeah, and then what is the ongoing management once the original project is completed? I personally have a very difficult time voting for any project that utilizes chemicals and chemical treatment. I understand that certain chemicals have been approved by the EPA. We have a problem with PFAS in our water supply across the state now that is very costly. And so I think we all, if we're really honest with ourselves, understand that chemicals are persistent, and that down the road, we continue to learn that chemicals that were continued to be safe have very long-lasting adverse effects on our environment, on our health. So I have a very hard time. We've stopped using herbicides completely in my personal life, and I don't like to see it entered into our water systems and wetland systems.
So just so I have the correct message to send to the golf course who, is hiring us. Is it a stipulation for this to move forward that they need to change the way they handle their fertilizers? I mean, is that a requirement you're setting for them?
When I was talking about the chemicals, I was talking specifically about the use of chemicals on the reemergent plant matter as part of the eradication process you're talking about.
Okay.
I think what Joyce was asking and Bonnie were asking for was to have a map of the broader watershed that you're talking about and a demonstration. So you indicated there's quite a buffer around the pond, and perhaps fertilizers from the golf course maintenance is not entering the system, but we don't know that. And again, the question is, once this eradication is complete, then how are you maintaining the new condition of the pond, the restored condition of the pond?
Well, the Phragmites would certainly be addressed likely every year. We'd obviously come and look, and if they aren't there some year, we would not need to treat them. But the state does encourage us to do something about them because it's such a nuisance. Other invasive species we would have to tackle as we find them. And, so that's as much as I can say about that. But the ongoing maintenance is usually different than the initial treatment because, we are able to restore the environment and keep an eye on it, and further restorations and further treatments are most often less.
So I think that's what the commission is asking to see. Again, in addition to kind of looking at the larger, and anyone can tell, if I'm not representing the other members of the commission correctly, please speak up. And then want to know what the ongoing maintenance is.
So we can certainly say that. What would be tough is to tell you what the ongoing amount would always be. Because, we after a storm, stuff can flush in there, and suddenly we're facing a different set of species than we were, 4 months ago. So, it's not a promise I can make, yet I can say that, most times, 80% of the time, what we do makes a difference, and it's far less next time.
So I
Okay.
would like to mention, there's a lot of contention around the use, I'm assuming, of glyophosphates, because that's most likely what would be used in the situation. But there is also, the whole point of this was to make the lake or the pond deeper, right? And so we're not dredging, but we're raking. Once you've raked, why not, instead of introducing the glyophosphates, introducing some plant species that can take up the ground matter that is the place where we're having the invasives, right? So if you essentially outcompete them with something that is supposed to be there, is non-problematic, and is native, then you won't have to be treating it regularly and all the time, unless you have outside introductions of chemicals and things that change the pH of the water.
So, when you, in a sense, do a partial reset and remove some of that organic matter, you are also removing some of the seed bed, but you never remove all of the seed bed. Even if you went in there and mechanically dredged right down back to the bottom, and let's even say made the pond deeper by taking out some of the hard substrate, the seed bed for aquatic plants will always exist. It doesn't disappear. The best analogy to use is if you go to your lawn and you take out a piece of grass. If you 2 weeks later you go, there's something else is growing there. There's always something in the land underwater, just like there is in the soil.
I do understand how plants work. It is, my statement remains, one of the most effective ways of dealing with Phragmites is actually the introduction of native species that outcompete them. So there are three options. There's the glyophosphates, there's another herbicide that I can't remember the name of. For the record, I used to be a sediment toxicologist for the EPA. So, but the other one is the introduction of native species. And so if that's not being tried first, are you really even trying? It's an option and it's being tossed out of hand because it's not as easy as throwing chemicals in the water. And so I think personally, it is worth the effort to try and not poison ourselves from here on out. You know, try it. Does it work? If it doesn't work, then you can move forward with other options. But I feel like recognizing that the option is available is really important given the situation that we are sitting on top of right now.
That makes, I understand. Let me propose something, and I haven't even cleared this with our client, so I may be speaking out of turn, but it seems to make sense maybe to split this into two projects. That we talk about the herbicides separately and talk about the treatment of, aluminum or copper or whatever we decide to use separately. And we could at least get the dredging done in order to allow the pond to go back to its original depth and retain more water. And, hopefully be a friendlier place for both animal and plant species. Would that be acceptable to the
Sean,
commission?
what do you do with the muck?
That's a question for Jeff.
Jeff,
I'm
what do you do with
sorry?
the muck? What do you do with the muck?
So in most of the projects, we usually find a local compost site, or we find a local farm, and then because it's full of nutrients. It's tilled into their land to provide fertilizer, nutrients.
And it's
Phosphorus
also
and
got
nitrogen.
invasive seeds. Also has these invasive seeds.
But those, keep in mind, so again, we're talking about in-water aquatic vegetation does not grow on land. Phragmites, of course, we've seen has morphed, and Phragmites can pretty much grow anywhere. Before Phragmites are removed mechanically, best management practice is to treat them with the systemic herbicide so that you're killing their root system, their rhizome systems, and when they get removed, they don't infest another area. The only other way when you physically remove Phragmites to control them from regrowing is to basically dig, excavate a 4-foot ditch, put them in the bottom, and then put soil over them so that they don't get the oxygen to get back to the surface.
So did you expect to truck the muck away and bring it somewhere? Because it says you're only going to get 85 cubic yards, you think?
Yeah, it's the pond's only 0.75 acres. We're not looking to, we're really more there to remove the vegetative root mat and the top layer of decaying. We're not trying to create a pool. We're not trying to, we're trying to, so understanding that we know that the golf course's goal is for water volume for irrigation. At the same time, we're an environmental company, and we know that you don't want to just remove all that organic matter that's sitting there. You just want to remove some of it to remove some of the nutrients, and hopefully, yes, vegetation, all that vegetation, aquatic vegetation will still grow back, but hopefully we're removing enough of that root nutrient base where it's not a nuisance, and it's providing the 25 or 30% plant coverage that you want within a water body. Yeah, and I get everybody's point on herbicides. I just know, especially with Phragmites, in the best way that I've seen to manage them is to is to use a systemic herbicide, and we're not putting it in the water, we're putting it on the plant's leaf surface so that it's absorbed by the leaf surface and goes into the root structure and kills the root structure. And usually when that's done, a native comes back, which is cattails. It just, I mean, and nature does its thing.
Okay, it's getting late. It sounds like we need to continue the hearing for more information. I think you've received a lot of feedback from the commission at this
What
point
about
in
that idea
time.
of splitting the project? Is that feasible as far as you're concerned? To do the mechanical part and save the herbicide part for?
I think that's
future
up to you
discussions?
folks. I mean, I think Joyce's question about the removal, if you can address those questions.
Megan was saying
I'm
something about the bank also, about making sure that the bank
the
would be
stabilization and
stabilization, all of that. That's all part of the
Yeah.
actual dredging, not dredging, whatever it is. It's, yeah.
the
rate.
project, the raking in the project. I think there's still, I mean, I don't, the short answer, if you're looking for a vote tonight, I'm not hearing the commission ready for a vote even on the mechanical aspect of it. Not that,
Yeah,
not that you wouldn't get a vote on the mechanical. I think you can answer and address the questions the commission has. It certainly sounds like that. And that, so if you want to go back and again, prepare to address the questions that were just raised and split it into two, that's up to you folks.
Perhaps
Okay.
we could see a site map. Would that be
So-
possible?
Yes, in the site, right. Yep.
so I to Sean's question is, if we, and
Are
again,
we
this is-
amenable to breaking it up? I mean, it sounds like the commission would be amenable to having you break it up into, I have no problem with that.
which obviously we would have to, edit our notice of intent and submit it, because that's basically the management plan.
Yeah.
You have to talk to the
But
client
I
too,
think,
yeah.
I think
Right.
what Sean's also getting at is, part of the ecological restoration is more of a it's like more of a one-time event. So I also, with the treatment of herbicides, it's not really a one-time event. So I guess the question is, if we remove the herbicides and did a separate notice of intent for that, could we move forward with this as an ecological restoration?
Again, I don't see where I don't think it's the primary purpose of the project. And secondly, I think that the concerns Megan's raised about in the particular performance standards, I don't know why you couldn't meet those performance standards. So I don't understand why you would need a limited project. And ensuring stabilization of the bank, one, I would think that that's important for your equipment. But two, I mean, we would want to see the area restored if any disturbance occurred. We would want to see the bank protected during the project. So
I'm sorry, I agree. I don't know why. Usually we have a section here that talks about erosion control and placing straw wattles where we're going to be where onshore the material is going to get received from the hydraulic, and that part isn't in here, so I apologize for that. And then after, we usually say that we're going to be leaving erosion control right along the shoreline until it's seeded and we know that ground is stable again.
right. So again, it sounds like you know where you need to go. It's 8:35. This meeting has been going on for 2 hours. I respect that the other commission members all have busy lives. I will have, by Thursday night, every night of this week, I will have had night meetings. And I think this ongoing discussion right now is not as productive as you folks going back and then coming back with the information we've requested. So would you like to continue to January 22nd?
Is that the
Yes,
next
please.
available meeting? Then
Yes.
yes.
I believe
Okay.
it's technically January 19th is the Wednesday.
Oh, why did someone, okay.
It's 2022, so I think that's,
Oh, you think I get that?
yes, but
Jeez,
it's the third Wednesday in January,
I'm
which I,
sorry about that. I don't even have my, I don't have a January calendar up yet here.
but it's the only
Um,
January meeting.
Right. So do I have a motion to continue to January 19th, 2022?
I move that the
Sparks.
meeting, yes, I move that it be continued to January
Do
26th.
I have a second?
Sparks here, a second.
All in favor? Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Boris, aye.
Be Clara.
Okay, we will see you on January 19th, not the
Okay,
22nd.
May I
Alright.
ask, and I don't know if this would be a request to Megan, could the commission just provide us with the questions for us to respond to? I understand the whole erosion piece, but
I've been writing
just
fast,
so we
but I
make
hope I didn't miss
sure, just
anything.
so we make sure when we come back, we have the answers that you're looking for.
Why don't we,
That's
to
something I can
further,
send something.
yeah, if you can summarize, and Megan, if you want to send it, if you think you may be missing something, send it to the board members who will add anything that they felt was missed.
Yeah, I'll draft it and make sure you can add anything before I send it out.
Thank you.
The recording will also be on the city's website, so they'll be able to watch this and play it back.
Okay.
Yay, COVID. We finally
Yeah.
have recorded meetings. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
All right, the next item on the agenda is review and approve. I'm going to say accept because minutes are accepted. Accept
Stephanie?
minutes from,
We have one more.
And one more thing.
oh geez,
Yeah, we got Grove Street.
that poor person. Oh God, I would have wrapped that up even sooner if I forgot about it halfway through that. Next item on the agenda, notice of intent for Curve Street, Churchill Street and Pine Street, Grove Street gas main replacement.
Hi, good evening. I am Rebecca Weissman with SWCA Environmental, and I am here today actually with Dave Hallowell with Eversource. He's in the licensing and permitting group with Eversource, and there should also be a Rich Diagula who is with Eversource. He is the Eversource project manager for this project. There may also be a few other Eversource representatives or folks with BL Engineering. They are the engineers for the project, but they can feel free to raise their hand if they have anything to add. I am going to share my screen. And can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we are here with a notice of intent for a proposed gas main replacement project that's on Curve Street and Clinton Street and Pine Ave. Just as a little project history, this project is actually a modification of a project that was previously approved by the Conservation Commission. In its original form, it was being proposed by Columbia Gas in Massachusetts. And Columbia Gas had identified approximately 2,900 linear feet of aging 16-inch bare steel natural gas main that needed to be replaced. That gas main was located on a cross-country route that extended from Grove Street to North Layden Street. It went across a large wetland system associated with the Salisbury Plains River, as well as the crossed the actual river itself. It was proposed to the Conservation Commission as a request for a determination of applicability. as an exempt utility maintenance project, and it did receive a negative determination of applicability from the commission in February of 2019. That determination is expected to expire in February, this coming February, 2022. And although this project was exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act, as I mentioned, it did cross within a large wetland system and had a lot of wetland impacts associated with it, as well as that crossing of the Salisbury Plains River. So since that time, Columbia Gas of Massachusetts, their assets in Massachusetts have been acquired by Eversource. Eversource identified that this project still needed to be undertaken due to the aging nature of this bare steel pipe. And this jumped ahead of screen. And so Eversource identified that this gas main still needed to be replaced. But due to all of those wetland impacts, although it's exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act, there was a lot of other environmental permits, and it was going to be a complicated project to try to permit, both as, you know, water quality certification with the Corps and various other permit processes. In addition to that, it was a more complicated project from logistics, and it was an environmentally damaging project because it went all the, you know, through these large wetland systems. So they identified a route that was within existing roadway layouts and would avoid any wetland impacts altogether. So the proposed route, instead of doing that cross-country route across all those wetlands and the Salisbury River, the proposed route is going to go along Curve Street to Clinton Street and then Pine Ave. It will cross the Salisbury Plains River on the existing bridge crossing. So it's going to be actually attached to the side of the bridge crossing, and then connect in with the existing main at North Layden Street. And then Eversource will retire the existing gas main that's shown. So the existing gas main is shown as this black dashed line. The proposed is this red dashed line on this USGS map. I do have some other maps as well. So although the project is proposed entirely within existing paved roadways, with the exception of that bridge crossing, it is located within a couple of jurisdictional areas. It's within the 100-foot buffer zone to bank and of the Salisbury River and bordering vegetated wetland. It is within the floodplain of the Salisbury Plains River and the bank buffer zone bordering land subject to flooding. Oh, and the 25-foot riverfront area associated with the river. We are proposing this as a limited project, being a utility installation project. So I also have another map I can show that's more of the more formal map, just a moment. Sorry. Pull this map over here. All right. So just so you can see, again, we've got the 100-foot buffer zone shown in blue, the 50-foot local buffer zone and riverfront area shown in green, the 25.
Sorry, Becky.
We don't see a
Becky.
plan.
Yeah, I was
Are
just
you
gonna say.
referencing a plan?
Yeah, sorry, I pulled it to the other screen, but I'm sharing my
If you
I'm
could
sharing
just
my
pull up.
PowerPoint the actual screen, sorry. We can, hold on, let me just pull that other one up. Here we go. Sorry about that. All right, can you see the screen now?
Yes.
That shows, okay,
Can you make it a little larger? Is that possible?
yes. All right, here we go. Apologies. So again, the Salisbury River is shown here. These are the wetlands. In blue is the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetlands and bank. In like this pink color is the local buffer, 50-foot buffer zone. Green is the local 50-foot buffer zone, and in pink is the 25-foot riverfront area. We do show, I can go through the procedures that we are, can you see now the PowerPoint presentation, or is it still on the PDF?
We see the plan.
Okay. All right, here we go. So in terms of procedures, construction procedures, they Eversource is proposing to first install erosion and sedimentation controls. The pipe is going to be installed, like I said, within the paved portion of the roads by conventional open trenching. And so that's going to consist of excavating a 40-inch wide trench, side casting those materials within the paved roadway, laying down the pipe, backfilling, and then restoring. So within the roadway, that will be repaving the roadway. At the crossing of the Salisbury Plains River, it will deviate from the existing roadway. It will not impact any wetlands in that location. Where it deviates from the road, the wetlands are separated from the river by a berm. So it'll deviate from the roadway. It'll be hung on the side of the bridge at that bridge crossing. And then there will be the three excavations that will happen that are going to be about 10 by 20 feet that will happen within existing paved roadways. And those are located in these locations. They're within existing paved roadways. That is to cut and cap the existing gas main, which will then be retired in place. So for project impacts, I did quantify impacts from the project. Impacts are primarily temporary in nature. There will be some impacts that are temporary to bordering land subject to flooding, to the 25-foot riverfront area, and to the 100-foot buffer zone. Permanent impacts are going to be limited only to that footprint of the pipe that's going to be hung on the bridge. And so it's only going to be that volume of pipe that as it's crossing the floodplain. So the only permanent impacts are to floodplain, and it's just going to be 57 cubic feet of pipe that will be hung on the side of the bridge. That work is negligible in comparison to the overall flood storage capacity that's provided by the Salisbury Plains River. So to minimize impacts during construction, Eversource will have a weekly compliance monitor who will go out and monitor erosion and sedimentation controls, make sure no work is occurring other than that work that's shown on the approved plans, and make sure that the environmental resources are being protected. We are proposing a plan that we believe minimizes disturbance compared to what was previously proposed, by working almost entirely within existing paved roadways, by crossing the river, by being hung on an existing bridge structure, We're going to keep work within our erosion control barriers that are shown on our plans and avoid the storage of fuel or of hazardous waste or fueling of or overnight parking of equipment within 100 feet of resource areas. And then just general good housekeeping and making sure that the project is sequenced in a way that minimizes overall disturbance of any one area at a time, and that erosion controls are installed at the beginning of the project. Erosion controls are shown on the plan. They will consist, I think we had proposed combination of wattles and silt fence were proposed by the engineer. There will also be catch basin inlet protection. And then, as I mentioned, the area will be restored after construction by repaving those existing paved surface, or in the small area next to the bridge where it deviates from the pavement by temporary or and permanent seeding where needed. So just as conclusion, again, this is a limited utility project, which, as had been explained at the last hearing, allows for some flexibility with regards to the performance standards. That said, we are going to fully meet performance standards for riverfront area, and we also comply with the stormwater standards, those that actually apply to a below ground utility project. We're meeting the performance standards for bordering land subject to flooding to the extent practicable. It's our belief that the 57 cubic feet that is provided of pipe that will be installed within the bordering land subject to flooding is truly negligible in comparison to the overall flood storage capacity of the area. And then, just as a side note, we did get a DEP file number. There was one comment that was presented by DEP that was related to whether a Chapter 91 license might be required. The project, and I did quote the regulations for the Chapter 91, but the regulations basically state that utilities attached to an existing bridge over a non-tidal river stream do not require a license or permit if a final order of conditions has been issued under the Wetlands Protection Act and the project does not reduce the space available for navigation. So the pipe will not be any lower to the water than the existing floor of the bridge, and so it will not impact any navigation. And with that, I'll open it up to if anybody has any questions.
Okay, the chair will ask our agent to please summarize her report and recommendations.
Sure. So I didn't note any issues with meeting the performance standards for the resource areas, even the bordering land subject to flooding. I think it is negligible when you consider the pipe is hanging under the bridge, so it's debatable, whether that really counts as bordering land subject to flooding, because it is the air under the bridge right now. So I don't think it's an issue meeting that performance standard to attach the pipe to the underside of the bridge. So most of my recommendations were more just housekeeping comments, that civil plans for our records should be stamped by the PE. I wasn't able to find all of the wetland flags out in the field, so any missing flags will need to be replaced prior to the start of work. And then just that silt socks are preferred to the straw wattles for wildlife reasons, and hay bales, we recommend that hay bales not be used due to the risk of invasive seeds in the hay. So beyond those housekeeping recommendations, I recommend just some additional special conditions for an order of conditions related to just if there is any vegetation removal required sort of along the shoulder within that limit of work. Just a couple conditions related to that, and then incorporating the proposed mitigation measures just to double up and include them in the order of conditions as well.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Any questions from the commissioners? I'll start with Joyce this time.
Thanks. How common is it to attach a gas main to a bridge?
I have permitted more than, I have
Pretty common.
permitted a multiple of them in the past year.
In the middle of the
So
city?
It is, yeah, it is fairly common. I don't know if Rich, if you want to say anything more about that, but this is my first one.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an opportunity for us, obviously, so we're not going underneath the bridge, so we're not affecting, riverways in that respect by doing directional drilling or jack and boring underneath waterways. So we do utilize existing structures that go over them. So we've done, as Becky mentioned, we've done a number of bridge crossings where we attach to the side of a bridge. We did one recently this past year in Dartmouth.
So Rich, you might explain how you are protecting the pipeline, because I think that's really Joyce's question. How are you protecting the gas from becoming ruptured? The pipeline from becoming, yeah. Yeah.
Sure. So it is wrapped. It is protected. So we do have protection that goes around it, and it is also, if I'm getting this correct, and Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, it's on the downstream side, so that no debris or anything will get stuck and up against it to allow anything to puncture the gas line. So the water is running in the opposite direction, obviously, of where the pipe is located on the side of the bridge. So that's one way to keep it from getting punctured from any debris or anything that may build up in the river. And then, as I mentioned, it's protected coated steel that we install.
Any other questions, Joyce?
No, very interesting. Thank you.
Sure.
Bonnie? Laura?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any questions. Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
Sparks here. I make a motion to close the hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second, Boris.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Boris, aye.
Equal aye.
Okay, do I have a motion to issue an order of conditions with the conditions that have been outlined by Megan?
Sparks here. I make a motion to. Oh, this isn't a COC. What is this? NOI?
An order of conditions. Yep. It's been a long night, Bonnie.
It has been, to issue the notice of intent with the conditions set out by our agent, Megan.
Do I have a second?
Boris, second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Boris, aye.
Equal aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, now next to last item on the agenda is a review and acceptance of the meeting minutes from 11/17. Did everyone have a chance to look at those?
Yes.
Any comments or changes? Do I have a motion to?
Typos, it was fine.
I have a motion to accept the minutes.
Sparks here. I make a motion to accept the minutes from November of 2021.
Do I have a second?
Boris, second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Boris, aye.
Equal aye.
Okay, the last item on the agenda is the Wetlands Protection Ordinance draft discussion. And it was suggested that maybe we schedule a separate meeting to do this and cover it. and so if everybody wants to be part of that discussion, I'm happy to have Megan or Pam try to coordinate that for us. Another thought I had was maybe doing a subcommittee, but I think if we just do a meeting, we can probably hash through this and get it in good shape. So what I'd like to do is propose that we do it after the first of the year.
Be good.
So Megan or Pam, if you would reach out to everyone and
Would it be,
I don't know if you do doodle polls.
would it be evening?
can do it.
Yeah, okay.
That's a good question. If other commission members, I mean, my days are very busy, but it actually might be easier for me to take a few hours out of the day than add another night meeting to my schedule. If that worked for other people. With that, I mean, I don't know, Joyce,
It's
is
fine.
that something
Fine
you
with me.
prefer?
It's fine with me, sure.
Okay, I have plenty of vacation time I can take to do this. All right, so a daytime meeting. Maybe we can have lunch somewhere.
Yeah. That'd be great.
I don't know, maybe could we do it in person? We'll have to wear masks. So you folks being, Pam and Megan, we've been ordered, we have to wear masks again at work, at least through
It
the
never
holidays.
stopped.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's never been lifted. So when we're sitting at our desk, we're fine. But when we're moving through the building and to get into the building, you have to be masked.
Yeah.
I'm into it. I like that no one can see my face anymore. No one can see me. It's fine.
Actually, I might be able to get a location for us that is very airy, attractive, and we might still wear masks, but.
Okay.
So,
Can,
all right.
We don't have to worry about open meeting laws or anything because it's just to talk about standards, right?
No, it would have to be, this would have to be a posted meeting.
It would, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then members of the public would have to be allowed to attend. If we thought,
Won't be
I don't
my
know if
living room
anybody would be
then.
interested.
Working meeting?
Yes, yes, yep.
I know it has to be posted. But
You can check it again, the open meeting law, but, so, oh, you think we don't have to allow members of the public? Well, that would be better.
yeah, I don't know because I mean, it's a working meeting. It's
Right. Once,
Right,
you're not discussing or.
it's not deliberating.
Or
Well,
deliberating.
Well,
You're not making policy till it comes back before the board.
would you check that with the city solicitor?
Mhm.
All right. That being said, Merry Christmas to all
Are
all
these
who
your 2 new
celebrate.
members? I
Oh,
see.
yes.
Hi.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Can you make them
Is
panelists?
Peggy Curtis the other one?
Yeah,
Yes.
Peggy and Ruby are. So if you make them panelists, we can say hello. They
They've been-
stuck through the whole meeting. This
They
is
have, and I
encouraging.
think they should get.
you get a Christmas present.
We have, let's see, we have a. I am here, Peggy. Yeah, we're going to make you panelists so we can see you.
I'm trying to. That is not working. Megan,
I thought I did.
I've tried it twice now.
What if I click allow to talk?
Wait a minute, there's Peggy. Peggy, if you have video and could turn it on, that would be appreciated.
Oh,
And you
this
can
goes.
unmute yourself
Okay.
to say hello.
Hmm.
Oh, let's see who has. I am okay with
Ruby.
Peggy's okay with daytime meetings. Hi, Peggy. You can unmute yourself and say hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Peg. How are you?
I went to City Hall tonight. That's why I was late. No one told me it was going to be a Zoom meeting. So I ran
Oh,
up there and I
no.
was like, oh, there's no cars here. I tried all the doors. They were locked. And I said, oh, darn, it's a Zoom meeting. So I had to rush back home. That's why I was late. So I hopped on here as soon as I could. And I talked to the city clerk and she said I'll get sworn in tomorrow after 12. So, but I was excited to be part of the first meeting. So I said, I have to do it.
Well, thank you. And thank you for staying for the whole meeting. And did we
Oh.
lose Ruby? She was in.
Yeah, we lost her. I don't know what happened.
Oh, okay.
She had emailed
Well-
me and say she was having some trouble with her connection, that she video, so maybe it dropped.
Okay, well, we will see her at the next meeting. Well, welcome everyone. And again, for everyone who celebrates, Merry Christmas, and it will be a Happy New Year by the time we get back together. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Sparks here. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
For a second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Boris, I.
Okay, goodbye. Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Bye.